that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday by China Radio International.
Paul James with you on this Wednesday, July 30th, 2014. Welcome to the Beijing Hour, coming to you live from the Chinese capital. Coming up on our program this morning, China's former security chief has become the highest-ranking official to be caught up in the current anti-corruption drive. There's been another deadly terrorist attack in Xinjiang, with local reports suggesting dozens of people have been killed. The U.S. and European Union are bringing down more sanctions on Russia connected to eastern Ukraine. Business, the Politburo promising more reforms and targeted stimulus through the remainder of this year. Sports, Paris Saint-Germain opens its tour of China with a decisive win over a Hong Kong club. And in entertainment, there's a new leader atop the Chinese box office. Let's check in with what's happening weather-wise. First and foremost, Lo Wen joins me on the desk. Good morning.
Good morning, Paul.
Well, did you get caught up in the thunder showers?
Yeah, definitely. It was pouring outside. I was like, okay, when is going to stop?
Yeah. Well, I was lucky. I stayed indoors most of yesterday and chilled out and, watched watched things on my computer.
Perfect day.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm kind of getting the impression, just taking a peek out the window right now, that today might also be a decent day to kind of stay indoors as well. Am I right?
Yeah, well, actually, after this early morning showers, today Beijing will be overcast and highest temperatures will drop down to 29 degrees Celsius. Overnight temperatures should drop down to around 24. Shanghai will be cloudy today with a high of 34. Overnight, it will be also cloudy with a low of 27. In Chongqing, it will see thunder showers today with a high of 38. Overnight lows are expected to be around 27. Elsewhere in the world, near Asia, Islamabad will have slight rain, highs of 34. Kabul will also have slight rain with a high of 32. In North America, New York will be cloudy today with a high of 27 degrees. Washington, cloudy as well with a high of 28 degrees. Honolulu, cloudy, 27. Toronto, Canada will see slight rain with a high of 19 degrees. Finally, onto South America, Buenos Aires will see slight rain with a high of 18. And Rio de Janeiro will be sunny today with a high of 21 degrees Celsius.
All right, thank you very much, Lo Wen. And just a reminder, a few ways to keep in contact with us here on the Beijing Hour. You can follow us on our Weibo and WeChat accounts by simply typing in the Beijing Hour, or send us an email directly, beijinghour@cri.com.cn. 4 minutes past the hour. China's former security chief, Zhou Yongkang, is now under party investigation, suspected of serious disciplinary violations. The investigation itself is going to be conducted by the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection of the Communist Party of China. 71-year-old became a member of the CPC Politburo back in 2002. He actually sat on the 9-member standing committee from 2007 to his retirement in November of 2012. Zhou Yongkang is the most senior party figure to face formal investigations as part of the current anti-corruption campaign. An op-ed, which appears in this morning's edition of the People's Daily, the flagship newspaper of the Communist Party of China, warning party members that there is no safe box for those who break the rules. Similar commentary penned by the official Xinhua news agency says the decision to investigate Zhou terminates a myth among people that senior leaders are immune from the party discipline and the law. Around 40 officials of provincial and ministerial level or higher have been investigated for corruption or other serious violations since Xi Jinping became the party's general secretary in November of 2012. Those now under investigation include Xu Caiho, former vice chair of China's Central Military Commission, and Su Rong, the former vice chair of China's top political advisory body. There's been another major terror attack in Xinjiang, and heavy casualties have been reported. Police in Sacha County in the Kashgar area say a mob armed with knives and axes randomly attacked civilians on their way to assaulting a local police station and government buildings. Local authorities say dozens of civilians have been killed or injured in the attack. Dozens of the attackers have also been shot dead by police. The exact death toll has not been revealed. Police in Sacha County say the attack was organized and premeditated. Sacha County near Kashgar, which is in Xinjiang's far west, the scene of another terrorist attack late last year, which saw 8 of the attackers shot dead by the authorities after attacking a local police station. The United States and the European Union are slapping new economic sanctions on Russia over the conflict in eastern Ukraine. U.S. President Barack Obama contends the new measures will make Russia's weak economy even weaker.
The United States is imposing new sanctions in key sectors of the Russian economy: energy, arms, and finance. We're blocking the exports of specific goods and technologies to the Russian energy sector. We're expanding our sanctions to more Russian banks and defense companies. And we're formally suspending credit that encourages exports to Russia and financing for economic development projects in Russia.
The European Union has also adopted new economic sanctions against Russia targeting the oil sector, defense equipment, and sensitive technologies. Both the EU and the U.S. contend Moscow is supplying tactical support for the rebels in eastern Ukraine. Moscow has been denying the allegations. New sanctions against Russia are also being fueled by the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 over eastern Ukraine earlier this month. Kiev and its allies are pointing the finger at the separatists, saying they used their Russian surface-to-air missile to take down the plane, mistaking it for a Ukrainian cargo jet. Separatists and Russia, though, blaming the Ukrainian military. Heavy fighting between the rebels and government forces in areas around the crash site have been hampering the international investigation into the crash. Meantime, the British government says preliminary findings from the black boxes of the crashed Boeing 777 expected to be published next week. Data from the black boxes has been analyzed in Britain and is now being turned over to the Netherlands, which is leading the investigation. Israel is escalating its military campaign against Hamas, striking symbols of the group's control in Gaza. Gaza's only power plant has been hit by Israeli shells, setting the facility on fire. The resulting fire has cut power to much of Gaza City, leaving close to 2 million people in the dark. Israeli forces have also been targeting tunnels running from Gaza into Israeli territory. The Israeli offensive through Tuesday has reportedly left around 100 Palestinians dead. Close to 1,200 Palestinians have been killed since the launch of the Israeli offensive into the region earlier this month. A Libyan fighter jet has crashed in the eastern city of Benghazi while carrying out a bombing mission against armed Islamic groups. Militant fighters have overrun a Libyan special forces base there after a battle involving rockets and warplanes, which left at least 30 people dead. The Libyan military says the jet went down due to mechanical failure. The fate of the two pilots who ejected remains unknown. Meantime, in the capital Tripoli, nearly 100 people have been killed in fighting between rival militia groups battling for control of the city's main airport over the past 2 weeks. Fighting has set fire to the oil depot which supplies the airport, with the blaze continuing to rage out of control since Sunday. In the wake of the deteriorating situation, China has been calling on its nationals to leave Libya. Jian Chuan is with the Chinese embassy in Libya.
As long as Chinese nationals submit their evacuation plans and notify us about the evacuation routes, the embassy will send the list to embassies in related countries. It will help Chinese nationals to enter neighboring countries for evacuation. We have already launched an emergency response plan. Currently, no Chinese was reported as injured in the country.
Many of the Chinese companies operating in Libya have already suspended their operations. Nearly 800 Chinese citizens have left Libya since May. However, there are still believed to be around 1,000 still left in the country. Approaching 10 minutes past the hour. At least 20 airports in eastern China are now experiencing flight delays or cancellations on a large scale this week. Civil Aviation Administration of China has been forced to issue a red alert yesterday afternoon. Red is the highest alert for flight disruptions. Shanghai's two airports, Pudong and Hongqiao, remain the most affected, with 160 flights canceled and another 40 delayed through yesterday. China's air traffic regulators contend bad weather is the main reason for the delays, arguing the military drills currently taking place in parts of central and eastern China are having only limited impact on civil aviation. Zhou Qing with China Eastern Airlines warning passengers to prepare for long delays.
China Eastern Airlines has already planned ahead and canceled 19 flights. We have completed rebooking procedures with the affected passengers. The passengers would depart on their new flights in an orderly manner.
As a result of the air traffic delays, many passengers have decided to switch to planes, making tickets, particularly in Shanghai, hard to come by.
I came here for a meeting. I arrived last night. My flight was on time last night, but this morning when I watched the news, it said a lot of flights would be cancelled, so I booked a train ticket instead.
Officials have warned the delays are likely to affect flights in eastern and central China until mid-August. Officials in charge of the main airport in Shanxi's provincial capital, Taiyuan, are calling for better regulation and controls over laser pointers. Call comes on the heels of reports of at least 11 cases since April of the high-powered light beams being pointed at airplanes trying to land at Taiyuan Airport. High-powered laser pointers do have the ability to severely disrupt pilots trying to make a landing. Li Jinhai is a pilot with China Eastern Airlines.
I remember we were about to make a landing, and we were passing through a residential area. Suddenly, a green laser light shot at the plane. It didn't hit my eyes directly, but it bounced off the windscreen, which caused the reflection. I couldn't see anything because of the blur.
Laser pointers are often sold on the streets or on the internet as novelty items. Laws are in place here in China which ban setting up lights or signs near airports which could affect flights. 4 teenagers have been arrested in connection with the murder of a Chinese student in Los Angeles. Investigators say they believe the teenagers attacked Qi Xinran as he was walking to his off-campus apartment last week from a study session at the University of Southern California. A 24-year-old graduate student in electrical engineering managed to walk back to his apartment but was found dead the next morning. LAPD Commander Andrew Smith.
I don't know why a group of young people would go on a crime spree as terrible as this, as horrible as this, and do these kind of unspeakable things to someone who's just walking home at night.
It's believed the group, ranging in age from 16 to 19, robbed the 24-year-old, then continued on with other robberies later on that night. A 14-year-old girl arrested on suspicion of a separate robbery, also believed to have a connection to the attack. Police in Guangdong have confiscated over 760 kilograms of materials connected to methamphetamines, arresting 52 people in connection with making the drugs. The crackdown in the city of Xinjiang and areas around it have involved more than 400 police and firefighters. Authorities became suspicious after locals reported a sour smell coming from a property.
We smelled the special odor which is normally associated with the production of meth. We went in and found the drug den within the 3-bedroom house. Several people were working there. The police immediately detained the suspects and found the raw materials and tools for making the drugs in the subsequent inspection.
The southern province of Guangdong has become a hub for the production of methamphetamines here in China. Provincial authorities have launched a widespread crackdown on the production and distribution of ice. Hong Kong Chief Executive CY Leung calling on officials in the region to oppose the Occupy Central movement. He's also voicing support for a petition against the movement, which has collected nearly 1 million signatures so far. We get more from CRI's Cao Yue.
CY Leung says the Occupy Central movement is unlawful, adding that he and other government officials cannot condone such behavior. He made the remark before Tuesday's Executive Council meeting. His comment comes on the heels of more supporters joining a campaign against the Occupy Central movement. Leung himself also voiced his support earlier this week. A number of senior Hong Kong officials had signed the petition, including Secretary for Home Affairs Deng Tak-sing, Secretary for Food and Health Kwok Wing-man, and Secretary for Education Eddie Ng. The chief executive says it is personal decision for officials to participate in the signature campaign, which was launched by the Alliance of Peace and Democracy. According to the organizer, Zhou Rong, the alliance has collected over 900,000 signatures so far.
It is quite obvious that Hong Kong people want peace and support universal suffrage. They won't threaten or force the government or any other parties to listen to a single voice. We should listen to the will of the people, and we won't support any action that goes against the basic law.
Besides common residents and political figures, more business professionals have joined the campaign against Occupy Central, worrying that the movement will bring negative economic effects to the financial hub. A survey conducted by the Hong Kong Bank Employees Association showed that more than 60% of the respondents believe the protracted move of Occupy Central would paralyze the territory's financial center, disrupt the operation of banks, or even cause layoffs. Some financial research institute even put the direct losses at about $650 million if the campaign lasts for 3 days. On Monday, the front's leading business chambers in Hong Kong formed a united front to oppose Occupy Central. Yan Zhao is chairman of the Chinese General Chamber of Commerce.
It will affect the health service, education, and other sectors. We can see that it also harms Hong Kong's image. Everybody should consider the losses it can bring to Hong Kong's tourism industry.
Chairman of Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce, Peng Yu-kai, says tourists are concerned about safety, and it's almost certain Occupy Central's action would deter them from visiting. According to Chief Executive C.Y. Leung, the second round of public consultations on constitutional reform will be conducted by the end of this year. Consultation details will be defined by the National People's Congress Standing Committee in August, when they are due to decide whether there is a need to amend the methods for selecting the Chief Executive. For CRI, I'm Zhao Yuwei.
Officials in Xinjiang pinning the blame on heat and high humidity this summer in northeast China as part of the reason for a major outbreak of rice blast. Devastating fungus has already infected more than a quarter of the rice crop in the province, which is one of China's most important agricultural bases. Officials are warning the outbreak could significantly reduce grain production in the region. Chen Jiguang is the director of Xinjiang's Plant Protection Agency.
The most urgent issue at hand is not how much or how seriously some of the rice leaves have already been infected, but how to stop the disease, which may cause severe losses in rice production. The provincial government has allocated an emergency fund to control the outbreak in 2 million mu of severely affected land with aerial spreads.
At the same time, officials are also warning drought conditions currently plaguing parts of central and northern China, also likely to impact this year's harvest, along with a pest outbreak. 18 minutes past the hour.
The Beijing Hour brings you 60 minutes of comprehensive news and information from China and the rest of the world. Whether it's kicking off the day with a mix of news, sports and entertainment, or in-depth analysis of all the day's big stories, as well as the closing numbers from the global markets, the Beijing Hour is your window on China and the world.
Let's throw ourselves into the business world on this Wednesday morning. First, though, let's see what happened overnight in both North America and in Europe on the markets. Joining me on the desk with our numbers, Sui.
Thanks, Paul. U.S. stocks fell on Tuesday, dropping a broad sell-off as a weak outlook from courier company UPS weighed on market sentiment. The S&P 500 ended below its 14-day moving average for the second straight day. UPS shares fell just under 4% after the world's biggest courier company reported second quarter earnings that failed to meet expectations. The poor performance from UPS hasn't been indicative of what's been happening during this current earnings season. Reuters data is suggesting that of the more than half of the companies listed on the S&P 500 which have reported Q2 results already, almost 70% have topped expectations. Shares of Twitter have soared 14.5% in extended trading after user growth topped expectations and its revenues more than doubled in the second quarter. On the macroeconomic front, new data from the U.S. has had little impact on the direction of equities. U.S. consumer confidence has jumped in July to a high not seen since 2007. But single-family home prices fell 0.3% in May, falling short of expectations. At a close, both the S&P 500 and Dow Jones lost nearly 0.5%, while the Nasdaq closed flat. In Europe, all three major indexes rose on Tuesday. Both Germany's DAX and France's CAC 40 added around 0.5%, while London's FTSE 100 closed nearly 0.3% higher.
All right, thanks a lot, Sui. China's business watchdog confirming that it's launched an anti-monopoly investigation into Microsoft's businesses here in the mainland. Inspectors investigating a Microsoft vice president and senior managers on top of making copies of the firm's financial statements and contracts. Ting is a lawyer at De Boer & Law offices in Shanghai.
里面实际上有微软公司的销售合同。
The materials the investigators have collected include certain sales contracts. The contracts may contain evidence to show whether Microsoft has violated China's anti-monopoly law. And based on these contracts, the government may also launch investigations into the companies that have done business with Microsoft to find out if Microsoft has been involved in any anti-monopoly violations.
State Administration for Industry and Commerce is accusing Microsoft of failing to fully disclose anti-competition information about its Windows operating system and Microsoft Office application. Microsoft saying that it is fully cooperating with the investigation. China's top policymakers promising to further balance reform and economic growth in the latter half of this year. Politburo issuing a statement about its macroeconomic policies following a meeting of the party's top leadership this week. The statement says it's critical to find a balance between short-term targets and long-term growth, emphasizing the importance of a certain growth rate. Politburo also says the government will continue with its targeted stimulus policies. China's central bank has already lowered the reserve requirement ratio of the commercial banks, which focus lending towards small-sized companies and the agriculture sector. International Monetary Fund warning higher interest rates and weaker growth in emerging markets could slice into global growth by as much as 2% over the next 5 years. The IMF's spillovers report suggests high rates and weak growth will reinforce each other, prompting slower growth and hurting emerging markets with large economic imbalances, such as Argentina, Brazil, Russia, and Turkey. The international lender also says the U.S. and the U.K. could tighten their monetary policies sooner than expected, leading to higher borrowing costs worldwide. IMF is also warning the conflict in Ukraine could reverberate to the rest of the region if sanctions against Russia escalate, affecting natural gas supplies to Europe and weakening European banks. Speaking of banks, shares of Bank of Communications rallying in Shanghai for the second straight day through Tuesday after the state-run lender announced plans to improve risk controls to boost competitiveness. Bank of Communications shares jumping over 2.5% yesterday after almost gaining the maximum 10% in value on Monday. In a statement filed with the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, Bank of Communications says it's studying plans to diversify its ownership and improve its corporate governance, move part of the broader plan by the central authorities to make better use of state assets through allowing more private money into the system. For more on what's happening on this front, we're joined live on the line now by Ben Cavender, principal with China Market Research Group in Shanghai. Ben, thanks as always for taking the time with us. This issue with Bank of Communications, the investors really liking what they're hearing from the BOC. But that being said, how much of this is actually, the statement is actually a change from the original policies that the Bank of Communications sort of put out earlier this year?
Well, so far it's more a statement. I don't think we're going to see any real changes for a while. I think when we do see changes, it is going to be a positive step forward, bringing in some private money and kind of making things a little bit more transparent in terms of what the bank is doing. But I think really this is more investors looking for something positive to react to. I think, a lot of the better company stocks have sort of been oversubscribed recently, and some people are looking for other areas to invest, and this sort of sends a positive signal.
Yeah, it's funny because the banking sector, when they finally did go public, it was sort of the go-to place for investors because of the fact that Chinese banks are considered, a pretty safe haven. That being said, when we talk about policy changes with the Chinese banking system, what sort of impact is that going to have on investors over the longer term, given that, theoretically we're going to see more competition in the banking sector?
I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's probably overall going to be a net benefit, and it should make people more interested in investing in these banks simply because there's going to be a lot more openness in terms of looking at what they're actually doing and how they're using their money. But in practical terms, all these banks can't do well. There is going to be more competition. It's going to mean that
here in China announced a few months back that they're going to open the market up. Private banking is going to become a reality here in China, and the domination of the state-run organs is not necessarily going to come to an end, but they're going to have to become more competitive. How far along are we coming on that front, Ben?
Well, I think we're taking steps. It's going to take time. I think a lot of people sort of complain that things are moving too slowly, that the government isn't moving fast enough to, change deposit requirements or lending requirements. But we are moving in the right direction. It looks like they've just given out some licenses now to some private banks, so I think that's a big step in the right direction. I think that's going to be pretty interesting to watch going forward.
Yeah, and lastly on that front, we've of course seen companies that normally wouldn't involve themselves in finance, such as Alibaba as an example, setting up these financing schemes like Yurbao and stuff like that. How much of that is going to continue on as we move forward as far as the banking system reforms are concerned?
Well, it looks to me like some of those companies are going to have a little bit of room to play. I mean, Tencent just got approval for a private banking license through its partner down in Xinjiang, and Tencent was doing sort of similar work to Alibaba. I think we'll ultimately probably see some regulation there from the government because they're going to be afraid that these companies might get out of hand with what they do. But I think this is going to put a lot of pressure on the state banks to offer more interesting financial products to consumers that are also safe, so better money market accounts, for example. So I think overall it's probably a positive thing.
Benjamin Cavender, principal with China Market Research in Shanghai. China's Ministry of Agriculture says authorities are maintaining a zero tolerance for the sale and growth of unapproved genetically modified crops. Comments follow reports of GM rice being found on sale at a supermarket in Hubei's capital, Wuhan. Chinese government has allowed several GM crops to be grown, including cotton, peppers, tomatoes, and papayas. Authorities have also authorized the import of GM soybeans and corn. However, China still does not allow the commercial production or commercial sale of GM grains, although officials have approved the experimental planting of 2 strains of pest-resistant GM rice. We're going to take a short break here on the Beijing Hour. Still to come on our program. In special reports, we'll take you through this week's animation fair taking place in Hong Kong. Speaking of Hong Kong and sports, French champions Paris Saint-Germain giving a bit of a football lesson to a Hong Kong club. And in entertainment, a road trip film now topping the Chinese box office. Paul James with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Gain a new perspective by visiting CRIEnglish.com.
Your definitive stop for everything you've ever wanted to know about China.
Do you want up-to-date analysis, amazing video reports, live radio, and the odd laugh along the way?
Log on to CRIEnglish.com and get to know the Middle Kingdom.
Wherever you are, put China at your fingertips.
By visiting CRIEnglish.com.
Be entertained, be informed, and be inspired with CRIEnglish.com.
The Beijing Hour brings you 60 minutes of comprehensive news and information from China and the rest of the world. We help you through the day with a mix of news, sports, and entertainment. We also bring you in-depth analysis of the day's biggest stories, as well as the closing numbers from the global markets. And it's here on the Beijing Hour. Let's take a look at the world together.
What's happening in China? What's happening in China? What's happening in the world? What's happening in the world? People in the know. The in-depth current affairs show with insights on the news that shapes China and the world. People in the know helps you to know the world better. Every day, in every corner, a different person with a different story. Feature show Frontline explores society behind the scenes and brings you fresh stories from today's China. Frontline, here on the radio and online at newsplusradio.cn. Technology has made the world a smaller place, but there is still so much we do not know. Every week, Postcards takes you on a trip of exploration and discovery. From a small village in Afghanistan to a protected cultural heritage site in South America. From Africa's amazing natural landscapes to the most advanced tech displays in the world. Postcards, where you meet the world without actually taking a trip. Postcards. Echoes from ancient times with the tempo of the modern age. In the the Spotlight gives you more choice from the vast landscape of authentic Chinese music and culture. In the Spotlight, the best of China's music and culture from north, south, east, and west. In the Spotlight. Between family and career, they choose dreams. Between work and art, they choose passion. Between the divine and nature, they choose devotion. Between life and death, they choose love. For a journey of life, for an inspiration of soul. This is Voices from Other Lands. Everywhere you look today, China is in the news. But what about the lives behind the stories? How do ordinary Chinese live and work? And does everyone here know Kung Fu? Life Up Close answers the questions in your mind when you think of China. Over 1 billion people and as many stories from all over this vast land. Life Up Close, bringing you all you need to know about the real Chinese living here in China.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday by China Radio International.
Paul James with you on this Wednesday morning. Still to come here on the Beijing Hour. In special reports, Hong Kong all abuzz with comic books and other animation this week. Sports, French football champs PSG opening their China tour with a decisive win down in Hong Kong. Entertainment, Tiny Times 3 being pushed out of the top spot on the Chinese box office. First, your headline news. China's former security chief, Zhou Yongkang, is now under party investigation, suspected of serious disciplinary violations. Investigation itself going to be conducted by the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection with the Communist Party of China. 71-year-old became a member of the CPC Politburo in 2002, sat on its 9-member standing committee from 2007 to his retirement in November of 2012. Zhou Yongkang, now the most senior party figure to face a formal investigation as part of the current anti-corruption campaign. There's been another major terror attack in Xinjiang, with heavy casualties being reported. Police in Sacha County in the Kashgar area say a mob armed with knives and axes randomly attacked civilians on their way to assaulting a local police station and government buildings. Local authorities say dozens of civilians have been killed or injured in the attack, and dozens of the attackers have also been shot dead by police. The European Union has agreed to a package of significant sanctions against Russia. These sanctions will limit Russian banks' access to EU capital markets, also include an arms embargo and restrictions on Russian access to European technology for the oil sector. In bringing in the new sanctions, the European Council says they should be considered a strong warning. Europe has joined the United States in leveling the new sanctions on Russia, with both sides contending Moscow is shipping arms and attempting to destabilize the situation in eastern Ukraine. Russia has consistently denied that it's playing a role in the unrest. French authorities have transferred a suspect wanted for an attack on a Jewish museum in Brussels to Belgian authorities. 29-year-old Mehdi Nemouchi is accused of opening fire inside the museum on May 24th, which left 4 people dead. Nemouchi is being described as a recidivist offender who became a radicalized Muslim during his last stay in prison back in 2007. He also reportedly spent time fighting in Syria. A Nigerian airliner has been suspended after transporting someone carrying the Ebola virus into the country. Nigerian authorities say all A-Sky airline flights are being suspended in an effort to try to protect Nigeria from the current Ebola outbreak along coastal West Africa. Officials say the airline could not provide a reasonable explanation as to how someone suffering from Ebola managed to make it on board one of its flights. The victim, a U.S. citizen who had been working as a Liberian official, managed to get aboard 2 flights earlier this week, even though he was reportedly suffering from a fever and diarrhea. He subsequently died of the Ebola virus after making it into Nigeria's largest city, Lagos. So far, the current outbreak of Ebola in Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia has killed close to 700 of the roughly 1,200 people infected with the virus. It's 35 minutes past the hour. It's time to take a peek at what's happening on the front pages of the Chinese newspapers on this Wednesday morning. Beijing Youth Daily headline reads, subway safety intensified. Authorities here in Beijing have stepped up security checks at public transport hubs. Local police announcing passengers and liquids are going to be checked at subway stations, and those who refuse those checks could be detained. Beijing Morning Post headline, GM scandal hits rice sales. Authorities in the city of Wuhan are reporting reduced rice sales after a supermarket was exposed selling illegally genetically modified rice. Provincial authorities in Hubei have launched an investigation. Ministry of Agriculture promising zero tolerance for the sale and cultivation of GM crops. Global Times headline, emergency measures for drought. Provincial authorities in Henan have launched a level 3 emergency response to the worst drought said to hit the province since 1949. Drought gripping many mountainous areas in western and northern Henan. The Henan provincial government has already set aside 1 billion yuan to help with the relief efforts. From the People's Daily, the headline, University Information Demand. Ministry of Education has released a new circular calling for the timely disclosure of information. This follows a series of scandals connected to college admissions. Information connected to the instructors at said schools and student management are to be made public. Interesting one from the People's Daily, the headline, trading port to open. Trading port on the border between Tibet and Nepal is set to open in October. The Geelong port will be the largest land trading port on the border between Tibet and Nepal. Cross-border trade between Tibet and Nepal, the lifeblood for many small communities situated on both sides of the border. An interesting one here from the Shanghai Daily. The headline, bus stop shelters stolen. 24 bus stop shelters, said to be worth around 1.4 million yuan, have been stolen overnight in Nanjing. The shelters themselves had only been up for just over a week. Bijan Chiavoshi joins me on the desk. He's been reading through the papers. I don't get that one.
I mean, how you do that.
Look, I mean, they're well, A, the logistics of it raise a lot of questions. B, who do you resell them to? I mean, what's the point? But at any rate, what's going on from what you've been reading?
Okay, well, taking a look at the China Daily, the headline reads, coal burning cuts Beijingers' lifespan. An expert at an energy forum in Beijing said that burning coal to provide heat for residents in the city has cut people's life expectancy by 5 years. Wang Min, an expert from Beijing University's China Center for Economic Research, gave a speech about China's energy issues at the 2014 China International Energy Forum on Tuesday. The article made by the head of China's Ministry of Health estimated at least 350,000 to 500,000 people died earlier than expected due to the air pollution.
Well, again, we've talked about air pollution quite a bit here on this program, and it's of a major concern. So when you come up with these sort of stats, you go, well, I mean, it just makes sense because air quality issues here in the capital have been a major problem for decades, not just for the last few years, for decades. Yeah. I remember when I moved here just under a decade ago, and this is when people were still firing the coal heaters inside hutongs. Wow. They used to burn coal inside, like these little coal pellets or whatever, inside their homes to heat them, and that's all that people had at that time.
Yeah, that's understandable.
And it was horrible. I mean, like you could taste the air in the middle of winter. I mean, things have gotten a lot better, but still a lot of work needs to be done to deal with air quality here in the capital.
Definitely. And taking a look at the Global Times, middle schoolers fitter than uni students, according to a survey. China's university students are in worse shape than its middle school students, according to a press conference at the 12th National Student Sports Games held in Shanghai. While there is a bounce back in fitness, the most recent survey showed that the improvements were limited only to middle school students. University students in 2022 showed declines across a number of indices, with some results worse than even those of middle school students.
That's interesting. I'd like to take a little bit closer look at the actual stats and the analysis that they're using on that front. Not disputing the numbers by any stretch of the imagination, but I'd be curious to take a look at it. Because realistically, I mean, kids here in China today, particularly the younger ones, are not getting as much exercise as maybe some of their older counterparts, or at least that's been the common convention or contention. Yeah. So I find that kind of odd that the middle school kids would actually be in better physical shape than the adults. But anyway, interesting analysis and look. Thank you very much, Bijan. Now, enthusiastic animation fans from across Asia have been flocking to Hong Kong this week for this year's Animation Comic Games Fair, which is said to be one of the biggest events of its kind in the world. CRI's Xiao Suchi with more.
This is cosplay at its best. Players sing and dance on stage wearing dramatic makeup, elaborate costumes, and using delicately made prompts to bring one or multiple comic scenes alive. This is their way to express their enthusiasm of the world of animations and games. Masa Asahi is